fun.
Kind of an interesting start. So we're going to begin the retreat today, or the first 2/3 of the retreat today is some updates from our grade reconfiguration task forces. So we're actually going to do a little bit different order than the agenda that I had sent you in last Friday's briefing. I think I sent it actually after the briefing. So we're going to begin with high school. So I think everybody knows Heather Miller. We've got Kurt Brichon, Woodville High School Principal, Kristen Rose, Inglemoor High School Assistant Principal, Josh Sanchez, North Shore Junior High Principal. They are all members of the high school grade reconfiguration task force. So we'll,
Wait, I can't see Kristen's name. Where are you?
Okay.
Kristen, sorry, Inglemoor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
But she's really from Boston.
I've been in both buildings in the past 6 years, yes. Share time.
We don't know the rate. We just don't know.
So we're going to start with high school, and then we'll take a break, and we'll transition to elementary, and then we'll take a break and wrap up with middle school today and do a little bit of a deeper dive than the other two levels because there's more moving pieces philosophically and programmatically at the middle school level than perhaps at the other two levels as we look ahead towards grade reconfiguration. So I will turn it over to Heather.
All right, thank you. And just to let you know, Kurt has a 1 o'clock parent meeting that he needs to be at, so he'll be stepping out at 12:40 in order to get back for that parent meeting. He already pushed it back a half hour, but we can't readjust anything, so just feel free to talk about things so hopefully get to the part. So just an overview of the task force outcomes, and these outcomes apply for all 3 task forces. These were the charges, if you will, for the task forces laid out by the school board, and these are our guiding thoughts. Every time we look at things, we go back to these outcomes and say, okay, does it fit within our realm of responsibility? If it falls outside of our realm of responsibility, we're going to take a second look at it. So that's just the overview for all of the task force. So high school task force, this is our mission statement that the group came to a consensus on probably January. North Shore School District High Schools empower students to engage, create, and achieve through collaborative and innovative learning. Our students will graduate ready to succeed in college careers and as citizens in local and global communities. We spent several months discussing this, and after a full year and a half of research, looking at students in high schools, what skills do they need to graduate, how do we make sure that they're productive citizens, how do we encourage them to go on to post-secondary options and education. So this was the collective wisdom of the task force, and it was agreed upon by consensus, probably I think January or February. Our members and meeting schedule, all of this information is on the district website. If any of you have gone on and looked at the grade reconfiguration, we have high school, elementary, and middle school there. We meet once monthly. I facilitate the group. We have representation from staff, parents, community members, and administration. And so this is where we'll spend most of our time giving you information on our work to date, and then at the end there'll be time for questions. So we're going to share this part of it. I already mentioned our mission statement, that we collaboratively agreed on the mission statement. A lot of the research that we did last year as a task force was digging into high schools. And the first aha we actually had was from a parent on the task force who, about the second meeting, said to us, I don't have kids in high school, and all I remember is high school from when I was in high school. So can you go back and re-educate us around what high school is, what are the current programs that we have at all of our high schools, what is the STEM focus, what is AP, what is IB, what is the current focus of all of our high school programs, how does athletics play into it, extracurricular. So we did a couple of meetings, just kind of getting everybody on the same page around what currently do our high schools look like in the North Shore School District. We did a presentation on our graduation rates, our dropout rates, AP information, similar to all the information that you guys see through our board performance measures. We really wanted to bring everybody to the same level of understanding. From there, we dug into what does current research say about high school students and what skills they need to be healthy and productive citizens. We looked at the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. We looked at TED Talks. One TED Talk and article that resonated with us was Tony Wagner. We looked at rigor redefined, and he gives us 7 skills that students need to have upon graduation. Critical thinking, problem solving, collaborative learning, facilitation, economic literacy, global literacy, and there were just many areas of focus that we looked at as a collective task force to kind of guide where did we go next. And our premise was from the very beginning, we could just add 9th graders into the school and just say, okay, we're doing grade reconfiguration, we have boundary adjustments, 9th graders go up, join Woodinville, join Inglemoor. But we want it to be more than that. And so what can it look like? We have an opportunity to kind of reset, if you will, what our 9-12 high school experience will look like for our students. And that has been the focus of our work. From all the research, from the conferences, from the visitations we've done. What will it look like for our students in the North Shore School District in grades 9 through 12? I think I'll stop there, and then when we think about work to date, we also have been focusing on some of the aspects of North Creek High School, and Carolyn comes in and says, okay, here's our task at hand, and we need to do these things. So we'll let Kurt talk a little bit about the process and what we've done around North Creek High School.
So I think one thing that's been unique for us is the balance. We're starting this new high school, North Creek, and so a lot of the energy and thoughts were always centered about North Creek. And for us as a task force was how do we bring it back to make sure what all the comprehensive high schools could look like and should look like. And so that was part of our process to make sure that we didn't lose focus in what's good for all kids across our district and how well the schools are doing it and how do we create that sort of that blueprint for the schools. But in doing so, the first thing we kept saying, the fourth comprehensive high school. We had to say comprehensive because someone at the alternative school that I know wants to make sure that I put that in. So in October, actually Carolyn had presented us with the community, everybody went through, as you know, and nominated like 600 names for this new school. And so if you think about that input, it just again reached out that it hit a lot of people and said, hey, I have a chance to make something that I have sense to create. And then the process went from there down to, was limited because of choice of names and then the most popular, and it came to the high school task force, 3 names, North Creek, Town Bark, and Pacific Crest. And then we were able to define what did that mean and why did people put those through to us. And then we, as a committee, looked at and tried to research a little bit more and gave some background information. And then we put forward our top choices naturally to review and then you move forward. So that was the first part of the review process. Carolyn, anything that you?
No, it was a great, the only thing I'd add, it was a great meeting where folks broke into teams and they had a daunting list of lots of names to review and then come back with names that we wrote on the board, and then we did a whole consensus of which would be the top 3. So it was I think the team did a super job.
It was fun to think about the historical aspect too that some of us didn't know, and even how some of our Inglemoor name, for instance, that came up to the conversation of what we were doing, and then there was criteria. So that was a recommendation for the task force. We submitted 3 names, and then that choice in North Creek is now our 4th comprehensive high school.
Want to mention the transition process?
Yeah, so obviously once we went through the high school, we said, hey, this is going to impact all of us, how we transition. And one thing unique about our committee is we have people from different experiences. And so the chore Carolyn brought to us was, so how do we start? Do we start just 9th graders and transition? And then think in a perfect world, that's probably what you do, is take that one class and just roll with it. But because of capacity, and I sit on the boundary revision committee too, that's probably not possible. So we knew we had to move more than 1 grade as we transitioned into this 9 through 12 school. And then it was a matter of, do we look at 10, do we look at 9 and 10, and roll those up, what impacts, and again, from everything across the board, you can imagine, and there's a lot of agendas, you know, what about athletics, and what about clubs, and what about AP courses or IB programs, and then so what about the juniors, how do you take them out of a high school they've been in, and then you get all the way to the seniors and go, hey, we start fresh and new, and we move somebody out, and again, as sitting on the task force, we're looking at that process of what happens. But in doing all of our research, and there's a ton of it, again, in October, Carolyn submitted to the board our background, our analysis of how we broke it all down and what it looked like. And again, you know, Carolyn did a ton of research that gave us, here's what schools in the state have done in the past and why they made those decisions. I felt like we were really educated on our choices. And it was, and we really have, I think we're blessed. We have some terrific parents on it that really speak their mind and try to see things and give us a different filter. But at the end, the 9, 10, 11 concept we felt was the best way to move forward for our district at the time, and alleviate some of the crowding that we're going to have at the schools, but also have a sense of community in North Creek as they go forward. So that happened in October, and then that was presented to the board, and we're moving through with 9 and 11.
And the reason it's important we mention that is so there's been 3 decisions that are recommendations that we've made. So those 2, and then we also then recommended the mission statement. So those are the 3, when you think about work so far, those are the 3 items that we have completed over the course of a year and a half. Now, you're going to see work ahead and where we're currently at and the things that we're discussing. So Josh can talk a little bit about the block schedule process.
So for us in regards to when we're with that mission, I think of 21st century skills and really looking at things like the empowering, the collaborative, the innovative, we started talking about what schedules can help provide for that, opportunities for learning, opportunities for teachers to be able to have that. So we really started looking at the block schedule. Right now, Inglemoor and Woodinville are both 2 days a week and then 3 days of 6 periods. So really seeing how can we utilize that time to help that happen. And so having that opportunity, really focusing on things like project-based learning, utilizing the partnerships that we've talked about with local industries or local schools, or local school colleges and businesses. That time can really be utilized in that way, so we definitely have determined that we want to move forward with that block schedule. And why now? Maybe like why do we have to determine that now? Really looking at how do we get all the schools on the same page, and we're preparing teachers to help support in their instruction in that way, because it is definitely different when you do block versus a 6-period day just based on time. So that was really a focus for us to really see that need, that students can utilize that time, teachers can utilize that time. When we see the space, for example, at North Creek High School and how that's being built, very much that group setting where you're going to need that time, and to do that within a 15-minute period definitely is really very challenging. And so if we really want to get to that in-depth kind of learning, we have determined that block schedule. And with Bothell not there, there's some groundwork being laid right now just in regards to helping support maybe more education, understanding where that's coming from. I know Heather went out and met with them this year, right? Well, I guess you met with all the schools, but
they got a special.
They got a special one. We got in the high school, so.
For those of us that don't know the block schedule, can you just briefly
So,
give
yep, I'll
me
just
the
share real
overview?
quick. So really quick, where we're at right now, looking at a 4-day-a-week block schedule, so that'd be looking at 3 periods a day. And within there, of course, we're going to talk about advisory time and options time a little bit later, but 3 periods a day. Currently, that's even what we do at North Shore right now, so we do odd periods 1, 3, 5 on certain days and 2, 4, 6 on another day. And those roughly at around 100 minutes. We haven't gotten to the details into minutes quite yet, but we see roughly around 90 to 100 minutes per period. And then 1 day would have to be a 6-period day to keep the cycle.
So when there's 7 periods, which we have at all of our schools now, where does that fit?
We're currently running 7th period, 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, because we have early release on Wednesdays. So we would, depending on how the structure and what would work out with early release, whether it changes or not, or stays the same, but we're running 4 days a week on the 7th period.
I think it's a good question, that will impact. We do know from the desire of many of our staff and kids, because like science, for instance, they need extended periods of time to do labs and things that the block obviously is a way to help that scenario out. But again, with the 7th period, what that's going to look like and our adjustments, I think that's going to come back to us. Again, this is a piece right now that we know we need some extended periods of time, and so we haven't finalized anything on that part. And again, with the 7th period, that could adjust how we do it, what it looks like, and again, going through that. I think the one thing that I would say for all of us, the biggest thing about it is for secondary, it's imperative that we all are in the same schedule. So when we trade kids, our first period is the same as somebody, or in the middle of the day, because we trade so many kids during the day. And so that's
Vaco getting on this same schedule.
everybody, yeah, so we can trade kids evenly or one at programs and everything, because we lose so much transition right now. We're on a modified block, but if we have a student that goes to auto tech, they lose a period just because of our schedules being off. So that's part of it as we're looking at the schedule. And
Plus we share staff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we, on the next slide, we'll talk more about the block schedule, and there's still more discussion to occur. We know we need to go out and get feedback from high school staffs. Our recommendation was this is a block schedule 135-246 that currently at this point in time we can all agree with around the table. And then we knew we needed to come back to it in a year to talk about how many days a week, what is the exact minutes, and then if we were looking at an advisory options time, how does that fit into that piece as well. So it was just our first level of discussion, but more to come on that work. So
Is the premise of the task force that these would be common across all of the high schools then?
yes, that is our premise. We talk about that consistently. If we're going to do it here, we're going to do it across all 4. So what are the things that are non-negotiable for high schools? What are the things that there would be more building level based decision around? So that's a common discussion. So we knew we needed to get input from staff. So Kristen?
So Heather came out to all 3 comprehensive high schools in the fall, and then went to SAS as well, and came in to pose 3 different agenda items for our staffs to consider. So first was just open-ended. Talk to us, what questions you have about high school grade reconfiguration, and what do you have, what do you want to know about 4th high school? We can call it North Creek. Second, she gave each table group a large piece of butcher paper and said, throw out what we know about high schools today. No constraints. What does your ideal high school look like? Asking us to be as creative as possible. So lots of things emerged. Big themes were programs and learning, professional development, scheduling, social, emotional, cultural needs of our students, facility needs, technology, along with a ton of other items. So then we broke into departments, and there was a whole list of questions that the TOSAs helped create, and departments then talked about their needs, and again, back to the ideal, using their curriculum. What should our high schools be looking at? So 3 common themes came out of all of these discussions at each of the buildings. One was school culture, so we've got boundary changes, we have staff members that are going to be coming and going from all of our schools, and then the adding of 9th and 10th grade students. So we really need to be aware of that culture shift, and that was the first item. The second was looking at grades 9 and 10. Should we do academies or houses, smaller groups of students that travel together? Do we want to house 9th and 10th graders in one part of the building to make it a smaller space for them? And then the third point that Heather just introduced was adult advocates or some sort of an advisory to make the school smaller for these students. So kids can get lost, and we're bringing in 2 grades this first year. So what can we do to make it a smaller environment and a way to connect better with our students?
So that would be adult advocate would be a staff member?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That's what we were just starting to toss out. And Kurt and I are on that committee, and we've got a lot more work to do there, but that's an idea that keeps coming up, how to make the school smaller and how do we provide mentoring and more support for our students.
When you talk, I'm sorry, when you talk about that, does that just involve the new high school, or are you talking?
All
First,
high
yeah, okay,
Yes,
so everything
all.
we're saying, we're talking
Yes.
about, this is what we want to do at all of our high schools.
All of them.
There's specific, oh, go ahead, Tony.
Well, well, was that an answer, Mark, to Kimberly's question? Were you going to answer Mark Kimberly's question? Mine was a little different.
I think there's, yeah, let me answer Kim's question. There are specific things that might just be to, that we discuss around North Creek High School. So the next thing on our list that we're doing for North Creek was we will be taking the list of mascot suggestions and color and distilling that down to a reasonable number so then the new principal can come in next fall and begin that task with students. And so Carolyn will be bringing that to us next fall and begin it. So we're very clear about if we're doing something just for North Creek, but really most of our discussion is all high schools.
We're talking about process and function.
Yes.
and-
We have an opportunity
Okay.
here,
Yeah.
so we should be looking at all of them.
Yes.
Well, there is a big opportunity here, and I'm wondering if during the staff discussions around an ideal high school, was there any discussion about anything that's been studied lately that's been beneficial changes to the way high school is done, the project-based learning, and are there any studies on project-based learning? And was there anything that was substantial that has a study attached to it that you're discussing and changing?
Well, there's lots of studies that we've looked at, and we've looked at common themes that come through the research. We as a group have not still distilled down to say we're ready to recommend this yet. So we've had lots of discussions, but there's nothing, advisory and option time is probably our closest one where we feel like we've got some consensus around the table of having some time during the day for an advisory, an option time where teachers connect with the students, so they're assigned a group of students and they do several different functions during that time of the day. Currently, all of our high schools have something, but it's a little different in all of them. But that's probably the closest, and then looking at the research around that, research everywhere talks about the importance of connecting an adult with a student. And we can find that in anything that we study and look at.
Okay, so
That's an example.
of that, okay.
And we are working towards, like we said, with the project-based learning or project lead the way, those kind of things too as well. Go through we're going to talk about how we're set up through curriculum alignment and transition. So we have a group that is working towards that, and then it's going to bring us all on board where we can help support
So when you talk
recommendations or researching.
staff, are you also asking students about, what kind of course selections they would like to see in a high school curriculum?
So the student piece is on our radar, but we have not yet gone out and asked students. One of the pieces that we need to wrestle with as a task force, and I mentioned it last night at the middle school task force, is what level of input do we get from staff? So, ideas, brainstorming versus feedback on a proposal. So those are two different things. So we have to be clear about when we want input and when we want feedback, and then what level of student engagement and student input do we want. And so we have to wrestle with that. It's on our list, but we don't have, I couldn't give you an answer that we're doing this, and that. And you guys are rapidly writing questions, I know, because you said you would,
Well,
so.
thank you very much. And then I had just one other question.
Yeah.
Based on the answer you just gave, Kimberly, was I have heard from community members, why isn't red one of the colors that is making it up to the top of that? Was there a specific reason red wasn't included?
Well, so there's no answer, it's
no
still
limitations on
open
colors.
right now, and red is,
Oh,
red
it's
is a
still
big
under
color.
consideration?
Oh, yeah, we haven't closed it,
Oh, red's not out.
Oh,
The
no.
only restrictions are the existing primary colors of
Right.
the 3 existing
Right.
schools.
So what we
Okay.
say is, black and gold, probably not the
Yeah.
primary
Right.
colors, or
Blue and white.
blue and white, or green and white, or green and blue and white. But you could have one of those colors as an
Accent color.
accent or a third color, but
Right.
absolutely, nothing is closed yet.
Okay, I was hearing from communities and
Wow.
different
Yeah.
feedback.
June 30th is the
Red
last
was
day.
it. Okay, red was out.
I think
Yeah.
that was out. And the task force hasn't, that, we won't discuss that till September, so we haven't addressed that.
I've heard hot pink just yesterday.
Oh, that would be unique.
Sixth grade.
Hot pink's not out, right, because that's mine.
Okay, so let me keep going. So the next bullet on there is determine protocol for task force recommendations. At our last meeting, we decided that we needed to have a protocol among our team in order to forward recommendations onto cabinet and to the school board when needed. And what would that look like? Because we really feel that if we're a group of 15 to 16 people, is majority enough? Or do we need to have more than that to really move an initiative or something that's really changing the system forward? And we wrestled with that, and we agreed that, number one, everybody's voice is important to be heard on the task force. So we have to have protocols in place anytime a proposal comes forward where everybody's voice is heard. And then if someone, there's a consensus protocol called FISTA 5, and 5 is I support it, 4 is I'm all in, 5, 4 is I'm there and I can go along with the group. 3 is I might have some questions. 2 is I need to process this further. 1 is I'm not there at all. And then that person though needs to be able to speak. Why is it that they're not there? And then what are the barriers from them getting there so that we can make sure all concerns are addressed at the table. So we agreed that although majority is nice and it's easier for moving decisions forward, we need to be very attentive to more of a consensus protocol. And we know at the end of the day, if we can't get to something, we send it, we wrestle with it, and either it's not a good enough idea, we need to table it, or we need to get assistance and help. So that's kind of where we're at with our decision-making protocol. Work groups are created. Josh had mentioned we have 3 work groups right now that are focusing on curriculum, academic program, transitions, and advisory and option time. So I'll speak to the curriculum academic program piece. Gretchen Schaefer's our director of secondary curriculum, and she wasn't able to be here, but she's kind of facilitating and leading that work group. And one thing I'm excited to hear is many of the members of that team just went to the South by Southwest conference last week and are going to be able to come back and share some of the new learning and the innovations and the creativity and what do we need to think about now as an academic program committee that might be different than what we were already thinking of. But some of the questions that we're wrestling with, Kristen alluded to, 9th and 10th grade, do we have blocks? Do we have teams, like the humanities team where we do English social studies together? Some of the teacher teams are wrestling with, well, we typically do world history now in 9th grade, but now that we're in a 9-12 high school, is there a way to have that as an option for a 9th or 10th grader and they take it when they want to rather than it's prescribed in 9th grade? With the science group, we have next generation science standards coming on board. We're looking at our sequence of science offerings. Is it going to be different? Is it going to be the same? We know that we have an English group right now working on piloting our English curriculum, so we'll have a brand new English curriculum that will be stable. But they're wrestling with some of those core ideas that have come up through our research and reading that what would we want to do in a 9-12 program? I can't speak with any specificity that we have anything laid out because it's still in the idea generation stage, and we're going to need to get input and feedback from staff on those things. So it's discussion right now.
I recently talked to someone in the community who suggested that statistics is a better first class than calculus.
Gosh,
I agree. Statistics should be in the curriculum before calculus is offered. And I just wondered if that's going to be part of what the curriculum and academic program group will be discussing, if that's even.
Yes, we'll put it on the list. So Josh, is there writing questions down for me?
There was a TED Talk that I watched.
Yeah.
That they recommended. That was by, I can't remember his name, a math magician, amazing math brain, but just thought-provoking.
So we offer statistics and we offer calculus, and those are choice courses for students once they get to those upper levels. Patty Stevens, our math TOSA, will be joining this curriculum subgroup for the evening. We're bringing in the TOSA. So next month, I think, is social studies, so the TOSA is coming in to meet with this small group to really kind of dig in and, okay, if we're going to make some changes, what would they be? And what do we need to think about? So I put that on the list.
I thought, wow, that's a really intriguing question.
So there's the argument that statistics isn't really math,
Right.
There is that argument as well, that's true.
which I disagree with.
I'm looking at the math guy over there.
So was his premise that statistics should be part of the required trajectory, so that we have so algebra, geometry, algebra 2, trigonometry, and then it sort of becomes more
It was more
diverse at that point?
that instead of calculus being the pinnacle of your math experience outside of statistics, that statistics come first and then calculus, so it was just a.
Sometimes students take them both at the same time,
Yeah.
they really are math.
Right, I'm sure many take them
And some students,
one or the other.
and some students don't take calculus, but may take statistics.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Vice versa.
Well, and it always comes back to that age-old, we don't get to be quite as free as we would like because there are systems, AP and IB out there, college admissions, that drive that. You have
They
to do
value those
calculus. And anytime we deviate, we hear back, right, from parents saying,
Right.
the schools are saying, I cannot follow this prescribed path.
So, yeah. So our other two work groups are transitions, advisory, and option time. So Josh, you're gonna speak to transitions?
So part of the transition group and really focusing on as we make this transition, really looking at how do we support students, particularly going high school, and we're recognizing that we're gonna have a 9-10 transition. And so our task is really understanding that, recognizing that, even then, we even then go a little bit with North Creek High School, because now we're gonna have all 3 grades brand new. So we're really focusing on things like schools welcoming the students after the boundaries are official, right? Where all of a sudden we get those letters out welcoming, the things like spring open houses potentially, so those students would have a chance to go if they were going, switching to Buffalo or North Creek or wherever. Just thinking those things through to allow as many opportunities for students and parents to get a chance to see those schools. We really want to create that buzz, right, that positiveness. Things like summer events, they already do those now, things like Falcon Day, Viking Day, Cougar Day, etc. And then really, again, that support for the 9th and 10th grade transitions is going to be the biggest ones. And really looking, if you've heard of Link Crew, I'm sure you've heard of Link Crew, and really looking at that aspect of what does that look like for that. Because right now it's a 1-day situation, but with 2 grade levels, what does that look like? And we see Link Crew to really be a piece of this. That's going to be a huge help. But obviously we see a lot of other things beyond that, from getting the coordinators early, getting them on board, getting them as a part of that shift, staff support and preparations, because you got to look the year before it all began, so what does that look like? And really wanting, particularly the first few years, if not as much as possible, Link Crew doing regular activities throughout the year. Right now it feels like it's maybe the 1 day, but how can we do more? I know at junior high we do web and we do something once a month with our 7th graders, and so can that be a system, again, throughout all the schools, to be really supporting that 9th thing throughout the whole, all of the years. And at North Creek, how do we support those 11th graders being leaders then and then for the following year, because they may not have been, 10th grade, it's a 1-year sophomore, they're not leaders quite yet. How do we help support them to be prepared? So that is in a nutshell what we're really focusing on, and there always seems to be more that always, as we keep thinking, oh, what about this, what about that? So we get the ideas, and then we're like, oh, we're going to recommend, and then now the high schools have to kind of figure that out. But what is doable?
Throw an outside of the box idea.
Please.
yes, please do, yeah.
Just an idea. What about having like community members that are in specific like geographic neighborhoods? So like in the north end where I live, that 39th Street where kids would be in high school and they can throw, maybe you'd have like one parent community leader that gets together a barbecue for their area to link the kids that are close together that might have gone to different schools or something. I don't know how feasible that would be, but little community settings versus.
Well, the PTA is talking.
Yeah.
Ways to do it as well, so that would do.
Yeah. Even though when we do the PTA, like all day barbecue, there's 600 kids there. So it'd be nice if the PTA broke it off into like more smaller communities by where you're kind of geographic.
Where the new geographic
Location.
areas are formed.
Yeah.
Are you,
Just as an idea. I mean,
because I know
take
that
care of it.
PTA and Foundation are talking about how can they help with this transition. Is that subcommittee in any way in communication or?
Well, not necessarily in communication. I think what we're looking for is those recommendations. So if we want to move forward, then how do we find support
Yeah.
to do that? I mean, I think that's a piece right now. Is this going to be good for kids?
Yeah,
And then how
Carmen
do
and I
we
have
move forward to
talked,
find
yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
information, at least within our group and
And one of the things, a couple things that, I'm gonna hook on the theme that Josh mentioned. One of our themes has been with transitions, specifically, has been, orientation and transition cannot be a one-time activity. It has to be a year. And so you look at the spring before, the summer, the fall, and then what do we do on those activities throughout the year? We know that there's increased expense to that and increased cost. So the task is to outline a plan. And then we gotta tie some numbers to it and see what's feasible to do and what's not feasible. But it can't be just an isolated event. And so that's been our premise. The small group has been working with that theme in their mind and has come up with really a great start. And so we're anxious to get back to it next month. But one thing that Josh said was it can't be one time, it has to be throughout the year, which then leads into advisory, because that's an avenue to do some of those activities, so.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question about transitions? Because I know that the work group was just created, but I noticed when I was in EDTF where all the comments came through, a lot of them have to do with transitions. So when folks get the draft, they don't necessarily think of it, I think, as separate activities, because they're thinking about, especially the kids that have to hop schools 3 or 4 years in a row. Is there any way, even if it's super high level, that we could attach some transition parameters or anything, but start attaching some detail to the next draft that comes out at the end of May, saying, okay, we know we have these kids that are going to have multiple transitions. We have these objectives of how a transition plan would work, even if we don't have a transition plan yet, just so folks have a little bit more idea that it's in process. I
We
think
know we're working on it, but not everybody knows.
yeah, and even if it's
Just
very
leave
high
it
level to attach it
It will
to
have
the,
to be a whole year, would be.
yeah, that would be great,
The
yeah.
3 task forces are also talking about working together, which would just be Heather and But they're talking about that need, the elementary and the middle school last night, and then high school, we talked about how do we work together and not just think about the 9, 10 going up, but the kids or the 6, 7 moving, right? But how do we?
Yeah, because
Make
since we have
sure.
the boundary shift and the
Exactly.
grade configuration,
Make
those pockets of kids that are getting affected. And I
Yeah.
think even if it's, again, very high level, the fact that folks know it's getting worse and we know,
Yeah, we could probably put it.
I mean,
put that in the same communication.
yeah, we can look at that. I'm even beginning tomorrow, a meeting with the high school administrative teams tomorrow to bring them up to speed on grade reconfiguration and get their input. And one of the topics is transition, because they have their own thinking around what it would look like in their school and what are the needs of the students who will be transitioning in, that may be juniors because of boundary adjustment. So there's so many facets to it.
Right.
So it's complex.
And when I visited, I think earlier in, late fall, early December, I was with Skyview Junior High 8th graders, and they were sharing some ideas with me of how they want to be involved as 11th graders, right? And what they were saying, like, we need to meet the principal early, we need to go to the school, we need to get a real sense of, right?
That was my question, if that's expected
Yes.
of them, what are we doing to support
Well,
that?
and I took notes, as Josh and Kristen are doing, very good ideas, that they want that early connection if they're going to be the leaders of that school and help the 9th and 10th. So I thought that was very thoughtful.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kristen, you want to talk a little bit about where we're at in that
So-
discussion?
Yeah, I'm on the third committee advisory option time. So right now in our high schools, we have, Inglemark calls it club study, Woodinville calls it options time. Bothell's called it academic study when they've done it in the past. And it's a time in the day, a couple times a week, somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, where students can work quietly in their classrooms. They can go seek help from another teacher. They can attend a club. Or at Woodinville, they get to have a little nutrition break if they want. Go buy a snack, pull something out of their lunch, maybe a little bit of a time to socialize there. So, we're looking at somehow possibly weaving that in, but we keep hearing this need for students to want to connect with a staff member and have a staff member follow them through their journey of high school. And we've thought through, these could be link crew groups that continue with them from their start as 9th or 10th graders this first year, so that they have a cohort that goes through with them. And we came up with 30 different things that they could do in advisory. And I'm sure we could incorporate a lot more than that. But, a few of them were the announcement and opportunities. We all have different ways of communicating with our students in our buildings, but if we had a small group, it's easier done in that way. Working with them on post-high school plans and scholarship opportunities. Shannon Hitch, Director of Special Ed for Secondary, we've been working a lot with the PBIS, and we'll have to deliver some instruction, and this would be a place to do that. Grade checks, checking their online grades and helping kids, progress in that area. Link crew, talked about, and just assistance on schoolwork, or how are you today, or noticing, hey, it was fun to see you in that swim meet last night. Again, more individualized connection with students. So more to come on that, and we've got research to do, and we'd like to go see this in place at other schools. And we're excited about that, and this keeps coming up, and staff have, and students have both expressed this is something they'd like to see.
Is that different than homeroom time? So my son does that at his school, but I'm asking him right now. He's not sure. So I know he has an advisory time but is homeroom different than advisory
It can be.
in high school?
It can be. Traditional homeroom might be more of, you go there, you take attendance, you get the announcements, those kinds of things.
Pass out information,
Yeah.
papers,
All the way to advisories that might have more of a curricular focus, where there's actual lessons that teachers might be delivering, or more content involved than a traditional homeroom. But they probably run the spectrum. And I don't know exactly what they all do in DJs, but
I just
Run the spectrum.
Yeah.
And our intent would be to, we have a menu of options, we have a menu of things, is to go out to staff and get feedback and talk to kids. So that's our intent, so we said that'd be our next step around that. What that will look like probably won't happen until next fall at this point, because we're getting later in the school year. But
What other schools, districts do that? Is there districts, or is it more the private schools?
Well, we've heard Lake Washington.
Yeah, we've heard there's different districts, different schools within districts.
Right.
We haven't done it, that's, Kirsten mentioned the next step is to research and visit other schools and see some things in action.
So I really appreciate this piece, because traditionally through the years, you hear stories of grown-ups about that one teacher that impacted their life. They remember the name, they remember, all of that about it. And we just yesterday heard Montel Williams tell a story that when he was in, I think, 3rd or 4th grade, he printed a paper and for the first time got an F on it because he had misspelled a word a number of times. And the word was circled in red. And the comment the teacher gave him was, "This is why you people will never make it in the world." And I know, it was stunning, the entire place gasped. And a teacher the next year took him under her wing, and he remembers her impact in his life, like 8 years down the line, just through the years encouraging him. So I'm really glad y'all are looking and prioritizing that as something that can really impact kids' lives. It's great.
And we've talked about not just teachers, but administrators having a group and other staff members, so, we all have our group. It would be very special.
That's the main reason, getting students feeling connected, right? That's what we know.
something the school knows.
Regularly, seeing it regularly, not just.
And we're very hopeful at this point, because our committee, we feel, is very close to consensus that this is the way to move forward. And then we've heard from several staff in the high schools when we were out doing visits that they would like something like this. So it would be something new for our system, and so it has some work, contractually, and it has some things that have to happen, so it's not just a slam dunk easy, but we think we're on the right track. I'll speak just quickly to important considerations in the work ahead. So I mentioned involvement from high school staff for input or feedback. I'll add students to that, because that's another key factor. Curriculum sequence recommendations from lead teacher teams. I referenced the science and social studies discussions we're having. We're creating a transition team with link coordinators and administrators, because our link coordinators have been actively involved in the transition process, and so their knowledge, and they know what works, is going to be crucial for us to tap into. So we need to create a team with our link coordinators. And we're going to have to expand our link coordinator base, because we're not going to be able to transition 2 grade levels probably with just our current setup. And then collaboration sessions with high school administrative teams, we're going to be, I'm going to begin those on a routine, probably every other month, routine basis. I'm starting tomorrow with the high school teams, and we're talking about school leadership and culture, boundary adjustments and transitions, and they're looking for input and feedback. Because they need to be involved in the work, because they're the ones leading the work. The task force is great, we can sit around and talk about what should be done, but they're the ones that are leading the work and carrying it out. So I have to remember to bring them along with us at the same time. And then visits and research around advisory option time, Kristen mentioned that, and then continued discussion about the block schedule. So that's our work, that's where we're headed for the next probably 5 to 6 months. And then as other things come up, and that's it. Are there any other questions you have?
Do you think that it would be helpful to the community and to staff and our teachers if, I know that we're looking at themes in the research, which is awesome, but do you think it's helpful when decisions are made then if we tie it back to, I know it's not particular studies, right, because you're gathering themes out of studies, but if we have particular things that we can tie, we made this decision, and here are some things that you can look at or research yourself if you want to, or this is some of the foundation. So it might not encompass everything of why the decision's made, but it links back to here's the standard. Because you said current research, current standards, and I think when people, I just know for myself, because I'm a questioner, I'll go, oh, well, why did they do that? And then it would be helpful for myself, I could go, oh, I just link up, and I just know, I think a lot of school districts, I've seen some school districts provide that information for parents, staff.
We can be attentive to that when we're moving forward on things. We also, on the website, all of the research and the resources that we are studying and analyzing are on there.
Okay. Maybe it would be good that at the end that it's the ones that we actually, so you have all of them, right? But you're not going to take all of them, right?
No, and you think about the research around connecting an adult with a kid.
It's like 500 articles.
Yeah.
I get that. But you know, there's usually a couple key pieces that inform your decision, even though, like if I'm writing a dissertation, it's still like there's a couple pieces that.
Okay, we'll be attentive to that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that are key, the key things came out of it.
And our mission statement is the other guiding force too. If something's not aligning with our mission statement, then we don't want to focus on it. Any other questions? I guess we're going to take a break and
See, there's representation across the theater cabins.
yes.
You know, this is a really helpful update because, at the EDTF meeting, I stayed out and talked to those parents.
Okay.
And it was, so parents came, they saw it again, and one of them, the parent was primarily concerned about transition. She's one in that Frank Love bubble where she has 4 different school years.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful, because we were asking very detailed questions.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to take a
Thank you.